I don't want you to misunderstand what happened back there. I know it was easy to miss it, so it's worth explaining. This time of year has the unhappy habit of giving the wrong impression. I don't want us to misunderstand the purpose of Yom Kippur. The time between Yom Kippur and Sukkot can be confusing. We have just done this intense soul searching, a project we've been working on for a while. We've been examining ourselves and apologizing. We've been trying to get right with ourselves and with God, trying to get sealed in that book of life, trying to get that guarantee for another year, 52 more bubbles to pop on the chart of weeks of our lives. And when we are done, we feel a sense of immense relief, a sense of promise. Our fate has already been written. We can live with impunity. We are in the book. This feels like a great time to make some long-term commitments to build something new. And God knows you might feel that way, that you might have that particular kind of overconfidence that might develop from being forgiven. God knows we have this urge to build. So God makes a suggestion. If you're feeling so at home, why not build a house? But it's not a house. It's a sukkah. What Rabbi Alan Lew calls the interrupted idea of a house, a parody of a house. On the day after Yom Kippur, we are commanded to build a house that is temporary, that we will disassemble when the holiday season is finally over. We are instructed that the roof must be made of an organic material with spaces in it big enough to see the stars, which is lovely unless it's raining. This fictitious house is designed to make sure we don't get the wrong impression. There is an inherent tension in the holiday of Sukkot. On the one hand, we are to go out and dwell in the elements. We are supposed to expose ourselves to the wind and the rain and the cold. And on the other hand, on Sukkot, we are joyful. We are commanded to be joyful. Sukkot is the only holiday with such a commandment. Not Purim, not Rosh Hashanah, just Sukkot. And not just once, but 3 times in the Torah. V'samachta b'hagecha, the Torah instructs, you shall be joyful in your festival. So here we are, out in our shaky booth, having been taken down a peg from the heights of Yom Kippur, and we're supposed to be happy. In his book, This is Real and You Are Completely Unprepared, Rabbi Alan Lew theorizes that there are 3 reasons we might be joyful on Sukkot. First, Sukkot is the fall harvest festival. He says that at Passover, when the first buds of spring are poking out, our agricultural ancestors felt anxiety, not knowing if the year would bring rain in abundance or drought and despair. At Shavuot, they brought the promising first fruits of the early harvest, but still the yield of their harvest was unknown. Now at Sukkot, we hang produce in our booth to remind us that the harvest is done. The rain has fallen, the plants have grown, and there's joy in reaping what we've sown. Rabbi Lew's second theory is that the joy of Sukkot is catharsis. The days of awe weighed so heavily on our hearts, and now they are over. So we eat food and invite over guests and enjoy the fall weather. However hard it was, whatever fate we have sealed for ourselves, it's over. Rabbi Lew's third explanation is that the joy comes from the truth that we have learned over these highest of days. He writes, we've spent the past many weeks stripping ourselves naked, acknowledging our brokenness, allowing ourselves to see what we won't usually look at, embracing the emptiness at the core of all experience, reducing our lives to a series of impulses that rise up and then fall away again, and we have even let the reins of denial slip a little. We have relaxed our fierce determination to ward off death at any cost. We have invited ourselves to entertain the possibility that we might die. This was the theme of Rabbi Hayon's beautiful sermon at Kol Nidre, and we who heard it know that it was not morbid or morose, but a joyful message. Having learned to number our days, we have a new appreciation for the days we have left. Joy in this sense, according to Rabbi Lew, is not about having fun. Joy, he writes, is a deep release of the soul, and it includes death and pain. Joy is any feeling fully felt, any experience we give our whole being to. We are conditioned to choose pleasure and reject pain, but the truth is, any moment of our life fully inhabited and feeling fully felt, any immersion in the full depth of life can be the source of deep joy. On Sukkot, we are thrust out into the world, holding these new truths, marveling at the possibility that however many days we have left, they can have meaning. The Talmud explains it this way. It is the usual way of human beings to feel secure and unafraid while under the shelter of their own roofs. On emerging from their house, their sense of security is diminished and they begin to feel fear. Israel, however, is different. While in their homes the whole year, they are apprehensive. But when Sukkot comes and they leave their homes and come under the shadow of the sukkah, their hearts are full of trust, faith, and joy, for now they are protected, not by the protection of their roofs, but by the shadow of their faith and trust in God. The Talmud compares it to a person who locks himself up at home for the fear of robbers. Regardless of how many locks he uses and how strong these locks may be, he remains afraid lest the locks be broken. Once he hears the voice of the king approaching and calling, "Emerge from your chambers and join me," he is no longer afraid. He immediately opens his door and emerges joyously to join the king. For wherever the king is, no harm can come to him. He then goes wherever the king leads him, and trust and joy never depart from him. We Jews are the people who are most at home when our home is temporary. We feel most secure when we can see just how precarious things really are. That is the truth and the joy of this moment in our calendar. This week's Torah portion, Ha'azinu, contains Moses' final words to his people in the form of a song. He sings them. Soon Moses will ascend to the top of the mountain to die alone, never getting the chance to reach the promised land towards which he had led his people for 40 years. It is a depressing fate. He never reaches his goal. And though Moses offers very little objection, the rabbis are as incensed as we are. Should not this great leader have gotten to touch the land he fought so hard to reach? This is the complaint they write into Moses' mouth in the Midrash. They imagine him saying, "Master of the world, after I have worn myself out in serving you, you tell me the time is drawing near for you to die?" Quoting Psalms, Moses demands, "I shall not die, but live and proclaim your works." But God is adamant, citing Ecclesiastes, saying, "You cannot. This is the fate of all human beings." In the Midrash, Moses is not dying because he's being punished for some sin. He's dying because people die. He's dying because life's fragility is its essential element, as Rabbi Hayon reminded us just a few days ago. It's interesting that Ecclesiastes is the scroll we read on Sukkot. It's the book that contains this complex and joyful truth that every human story contains both a time to build up and a time to break down, a time to live and a time to die. It's not an uproariously funny book, but it captures the complex joy of this season, the joy of someone who knows that they are walking with the King, dining out on the credit of truth and faith. I hope you saw our beautiful new congregational sukkah on your way in. Our old sukkah had its charms, but it also had its flaws. It was a little too permanent to be temporary, a little too tree-covered to help us truly appreciate the stars. So now we have a new one, and we're going to fill it almost every night this coming week with programming. Sunday is Sukkot on Sunset. Monday, we've got a songstress and storyteller, Al Silber. Wednesday, we can eat in the sukkah and write postcards to low-propensity voters. Next Friday after services is an oneg sponsored by the Sisterhood. Saturday, you can come and sip libation from a local distillery. There's something literally for everyone. I hope you'll find time to join us in the sukkah, to feel this unique sense of joy that one can only feel when one is together with community in a house that is only the idea of a house that calls attention to the illusory nature of all houses. Yesterday, I was out assisting the team of congregants led by Steve Moskowitz, who were putting together our sukkah kit for the first time. We had stood up a vertical pole with a metal connector at the top, but we'd yet to connect it to the roof at all, so it was just freestanding. I was standing nearby, unaware, suggesting that maybe we pick up some of the unused poles from the ground before someone tripped. Someone from the group told me it would be fine. Everybody was being very careful. Then, two things happened within about 30 seconds of each other. First is someone tripped on the poles. It was a stumble. He's fine. And then the wind caught the vertical pole, and it pivoted on the place that it was connected. And it passed about 6 inches in front of my face, the metal connector, the heavy steel connector, about this far from my nose. My first thought was, whatever combination of prayers I said at Yom Kippur the day before, I clearly did it right. Because you all were about one uninspired Ashamnu away from visiting me in the hospital. But then, when my life had finished flashing before my eyes, I thought, maybe this is the perfect way to build a sukkah. Maybe this is why we force modern Jewish families, even the least handy among us, to get out ladders and toolboxes and assemble structures to resemble the tents our ancestors built in the wilderness. Maybe we do it so that at some point, someone will strike their thumb with the hammer, or will almost fall off the ladder, or will get a little shock when they plug in the tangled twinkle lights. And in that moment, a tiny bit of their life will pass before their eyes, and they will remember that nothing is permanent. Not this house, not this forgiveness, not this sense of security, none of it. And as they nurse their thumb or climb gingerly down off the ladder or pat their frizzled hair back down, this realization will bring them a certain kind of joy. May you be safe, even in the building of your sukkah, a structure that reveals the illusions of your sense of security. And may this Zman Simchatenu, this season of our joy, bring light and hope to us all. Shabbat Shalom.